episodes, really the last 15 to 20 episodes of a season, basically half the season, I'm starting to get burned out. And I am trying to deliver daily quality content by myself. You guys send me stories, and that's amazing. I'm not belittling that at all. Getting the research together, recording the episode, editing it takes a toll. It really does kind of take a toll on you. By the end of the season, I'm completely tapped out. I think it's really interesting is a lot of the episodes we've covered in Classics weeks are end of the season. So I don't know if it's somehow I'm able to get reinvigorated. I don't know if it's necessity is the mother of invention. I'm not for sure. And we'll go more into that when we talk about the Yawn Machine. But I really like this episode. The first story is about the Viking ship. I don't know if I was able to convey in the episode itself how much I love that story. I remember hearing that story back in the 90s when I was reading my National Directory of Haunted Places book. And I obviously was able to find way more detail. There was just a paragraph of it in the book. But that's one of my favorite stories. I don't know if it's one of my favorite stories I've ever covered on the podcast, but I think it's definitely one of my favorite stories pre-podcast, if that makes sense. Hearing about it back in the 90s, it filled my imagination with all of these stories. How did the boat get there? Was it real? Not did they make it up, but was it a ghost boat? Was it a physical boat? Was it a curse because it was found and then that massive earthquake happened and then it was never found again? I think when I re-listened to the episode and I still have this mental idea of how much I love that story. It's super evocative. It's something that I've loved for 20 years. I have a little picture of it. Glad that I was. This is one of the cool things about the podcast. I'm able to share those stories with you. It might be one of my favorite stories I've told on Dead Rabbit Radio, honestly. I think it's a well done, well produced segment. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then it goes into the weird boat found at the World Trade Center. I think it's just a well put together segment. But that's not why you're here. That's not why anyone is here. We're here for the Yawn Machine. And there's an interesting backstory to this as well. So again, Rage Cat, I'm really happy that you picked this episode. The background to this episode is that Ramsey, I believe it was Ramsey, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe Ramsey sent me the story for the food replicator. He found this weird website about a guy who had built a food replicator. We're always looking for the next Hans character, right? We're always looking for the next person with a totally weird, obscure belief. There's not a lot of them. You think there would be more of them. It's not just that they have an obscure or weird belief, it's that they have to be earnest about it. It has to fit the show. I don't want to just talk about some guys weirdo, made up catalytic converter or something like that. Or Time Cube is another one. I'm just it's been covered 100 times. It's super dense. But Hans does this. We have the guy who made the hats that were supposed to keep aliens from getting in your head and make it so your kids wouldn't have autism. That's a really dangerous belief too. I wish they didn't exist, but I like to find these crackpot theories that are actually harmful and expose those. But the food replicator, man, I remember I got this from Ramsey, and we're at the end of the season, or we're coming up to the end of the season, and usually at the end of the season, I've fixed this problem, but a lot of times I'm running out of stories. I'm not. What I mean when I say I'm running out of stories is I don't have enough stories prepped. I don't have enough stories prepped and ready to go. I have notes, or maybe I don't have notes. Maybe I just have an article bookmarked. He sends me this food replicator, I think midway through the season, honestly. I'd been sitting on it for a while, and it was so dense. It was so much information, and I knew that there was gold here. But to take all of that information and turn it into a 15, 20, even if I did a solo episode on it, a 35-minute episode, it's still a lot of work. It's a lot of work. But I'm getting desperate for... I remember this. I remember recording this. I started getting really desperate for content. And it's funny because think about it. I have to have an episode. I have to have these daily episodes. I can't go, I didn't find anything, guys, because then people just stop tuning into the show. So I remember going, oh man, what am I going to do? And so what did I do? I found a story that I knew was a banger right out the hit. I was just going through my head. I was like, dude, that Viking boat. It has beginning, middle, and the end. It's super evocative. I love it. I know where the source material at. It's pretty well covered in the media. Not like CNN was there, but it was in this book. Da 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 da. And I'm looking at all my other notes, and there was just nothing. There was nothing. I couldn't think of anything, and I was thinking I could do the food replicator, but it was so much information. So I compromised. I said, we're going to do this Paul Adams character because he has all these different inventions. And I remember we go, it's funny because the next episode, the classics episode, we're going to do the food replicator because I think they're great back to back. But this one, I had to do an episode, and I needed something good and quick. And it was the Yawn Machine. I remember I was kind of looking through this stuff. Ramsey had highlighted the Yawn Machine as well. It's not like he just sent me a giant encyclopedia and goes, "Here you go, dork. Read this." And this is one of those episodes that I can hear the tone in my voice when I'm recording it, at least when I started. And if I remember correctly too, this did happen actually. I could probably verify it going through the source file. But this was an episode that I think I had to record twice, which is a horrible experience. It happens it happens, I won't say it's not rare. We'll put it that way. It happens a couple times this season where I will record. The first segment was totally fine, but if I remember correctly, this happened with Monkeys Don't Exist. This happened with Franz as well. I recorded the Yawn Machine and it sucked. Like, I went through 10, 15, 20 minutes and it sucked. I actually just did that the other day too. That's not something you really learn. There was an episode I did just recently. I don't remember. I remember recording it and looking. I was like, it would take me longer to edit this than it would just to re-record it. I'm looking at all the notes. At this point, I've taken his website and turned it into easy to digest notes that I read off the screen. There's no script. So I remember recording it and it wasn't great because there's a lot of information you have to lay out. And this version of it, the final version of it, I think works. Like, I think I did have to do it once and realize what information is useful and what information. And when I say I'm recording it back to back, I'm not getting up. It's not like I'm taking a day off. The episodes do. I'll sit there, record an episode for 20 minutes, go, "Oh, this stinks," and then I usually will stop it. Obviously stop it. I know how to work a recording thing. I'll keep that original recording usually, just in case something happens. In case I want to release garbage. But then I just start recording over again, and it's fresh, kind of like I know which stuff works and which stuff doesn't. This is one of those episodes where I can kind of hear that tone in my voice, where even on the second draft I'm thinking, does this work? I can hear those different mental states. I'll hear stuff and go, dude, I know this isn't working. I've listened to episodes and I can hear like something in my voice. There's a hint of desperation. I'm thinking, yeah, you knew it wasn't working. Hopefully you recover by the end of the episode. And for me, this episode, it stands out for a couple reasons. One, I just love the idea of the Yawn Machine itself. I think I'm kind of glossing over the fact that a guy invented you are the Yawn Machine. Everything he says about it is ridiculous. That what was it again? Yawning prevents sleep or something like that. I got a lot of cool yawn facts in there that I've been carrying around in my pocket. The whole stuff about yawns making you empathetic, or if you yawn when other people yawn, that means you're empathetic. Those are things I've been telling people. Like, I always have these bits of information I just drop in the middle of conversations. I'm that guy. So I was able to kind of sprinkle that stuff in. I think it's really funny because I'm talking about this machine, the Yawn Machine, and he's saying that it like helps you become emotional and helps you get over like bullying and stuff. He's talking about being bullied as a kid. And then I start opening up emotionally. And I didn't realize this when I recorded it. I don't think so. I don't think I'm referencing it in the episode. I say in the episode this is an oddly personal episode. I talk about how I deal with heartbreak. I talk about my childhood, how I used to move schools all the time and I would be bullied and then become the bully. And it's funny, when I was listening to that, I was like, Jason, you better explain what you mean by becoming a bully. I was going on, and I was like, Jason, you did explain that you like only bullied people who deserved it, right? You're not. And then I like after 15 minutes, I go, oh, by the way, I only bullied people. I got in fights is kind of what that meant. Like, someone was, picking on someone was being a jerk, we'd get in a fight. I wasn't shaking down kids for their lunch money. But I was like, dude, please say that you're not that kind of bully. I'm a jerk, but, I'm a jerk of justice. It was weird. Talking about all the yawning I was doing, and he was saying how it was like to open up the emotions, and then I was actually opening it up emotionally, and I was re-listening to it for the classics. I go, that's really interesting, actually. Like, why am I revealing this information? It is a revealing episode. I was like, oh yeah, when I want to forget about a girl, I know the pixel one. I've done that before. I'd imagine a picture of the girl, and I'd imagine the pixels going out until there was nothing but a black screen. And the other thing, I know I'm getting over a girl when I forget her middle name. Like, that's all deeply personal stuff. So it was interesting. An episode about a man saying this opens you up emotionally, and I'm opening up emotionally. But for me, the best part of this episode, and it's funny because I didn't know if the episode was going to work when I was recording it. I had an ace in my pocket. I remember when I was going through his website, when I was compiling my notes, I was laughing so hard. And I knew, I go, you have to set up the yawn machine, because that's the way the show is. You're not just going, this is dumb, and you have to set it up to show why it's ridiculous. The stars, the checklist thing, that whole bit about Larry's gym, the demon no one will believe me about, and Mary. And I remember I just stumbled across it on his website, and I was laughing so hard. And that was the thing. I can't wait to share that with you guys. Like, that's when I know that the story has potential. The same thing with the Viking ship. That is something that I've always loved, that story. If I can't wait to it doesn't happen all the time. Like, most of the time, if I'm recording the episode, it's something that I want to tell you about. But there are some stories that I almost can't wait to tell you about, that I'm like, oh dude, I wish I could just record this right now. So this was very interesting to have that feeling at the end of the season. And I knew the setup, I had to set up what the yawn machine was. And the second draft was better than the first one. And I think it's a fun journey, but when I was recording it, I knew in the back of my head, listen, you might be struggling. Listening back on this episode is not a struggle. Like, it was recording it, but I think it's pretty smooth. But I was like, dude, the ending is spectacular. The ending with this guy's troubled life. He's made a checklist. And the stuff that's on just making the checklist itself would be like, oh, and he tells you to make a checklist. Don't do that, guys. Don't take this advice. It'll make you look like a serial killer. But knowing what that list was and how ridiculous it was, the demon that no one will believe me about, what does that even mean? So it was funny that I knew that and same thing with like a Hans episode. I knew the theory itself, monkeys don't exist, is funny. But you just can't go, there's a guy who believes that monkeys don't exist. You kind of have to set it up and build that. And kind of build he thinks the color orange is satanic. I kind of had to weave that. And that episode was super difficult to record as well. But I knew that there was a juicy orange in the middle of that. Where orange is hanging out, just off a tree. I knew there was a juicy orange in that tree. So Rage Cat, thank you so much for recommending this. It was a ball re-listening to. And the next episode, no one recommended as a classics episode, but I gotta cover it. I want to cover it this season. It's the Food Replicator. We're actually going to cover the sequel to this episode, because I got a lot of background, a lot of stuff on that one that you guys are going to want to tune in for that one. So join us next Dead Rabbit Radio. Trust me, you're going to want to hear about this. Tune into the next Dead Rabbit Radio Classics episode. Have a great day, guys. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio Classics, where we listen to a classic episode of Dead Rabbit Radio with a new intro and a new super outro. This is the one you guys are going to want to hear about. I normally take the requests from Patreon supporters, but no one requested this one, and it doesn't mean that it's not a great episode. Rage Cat recommended the prequel to this, You Are the Yawn Machine, but I wanted to cover it this season. I think it's great to have it back to back, the Food Replicator and the